Hello ladies and gentlemen, Gabester here. This is the Heroic Tank Guide for Iron Juggernaut. And this video is meant to assist tank players with all the basics that they'll need to know to get through this encounter on Heroic difficulty. If you'd like any other videos for this encounter with more details, you can click on the annotations at the bottom. And otherwise, let's get started. So the main mechanic for tanks is of course the tank swaps and the flame vents ability that dictates this. So mechanically this works the same as on normal, and it's just very important on Heroic that this is managed properly. Flame Vents is cast every 10 seconds in a cone in front of the boss, so make sure that only the current tank is in front of him. The other tank can just hang out on the side. When this is cast, it applies Ignite Armor, which is a 30-second dot that does really heavy fire damage and increases the damage taken by fire for the 30-second period. When you're looking at 3 stacks of this dot, which should be the max that the tanks ever get, you will be taking around 100,000 plus damage every second for the 30-second duration. So quite a bit of damage from this. Therefore, the most important thing on this encounter for a tank is swapping this every 3 stacks like clockwork. You should never be taking a 4th stack, so make sure you and your tank partner are taunting as soon as your stack drops off. You have about a 10-second window once that occurs before the next flame vent is cast. And then you can adjust positions during that 10-second period and just keep the process going. Because it is on a 10-second clock, you can also use a minor personal cooldown if needed to help mitigate the initial hit. But that is purely up to you. The second thing to pay attention to for tanking is the basic positions for the assault mode during the normal part of this encounter. So you can see here that the way we set up, which worked pretty well, was to have our tanks kind of hang out on the blue marker, the current tank anyway at the time, so that the boss is facing the back of the room essentially, or you might consider this the front of the room. And it depends somewhat on your raid's strategy for the siege mode, which we'll talk about in a moment briefly. But essentially, keeping the tank faced away, of course, is important because of the cone attack, but also because the ricochet, and which is a new mechanic on Heroic that should not target you as a tank, will go out toward ranged raid members. You do not want it to have to pass through melee players or the tank positions at all. So if you keep the boss faced away from where the ranged are, then no one else will need to dodge that new mechanic, basically. So you can see here, tanks are in the blue, opposite where the ranged players are, which are on the other marker locations. Our melee are off to the right, and our off tank that's not on the boss at the time is off to the left. So that worked pretty well there. The next thing to consider is how your raid handles siege mode. As a tank, you won't really need to do anything differently on this version than the normal version. But if you are within about 50 yards of the boss during siege mode, you will notice the Mortar Barrage ability, which is new on Heroic. And it basically launches mortars all around the boss constantly during the phase. So you simply need to dodge these while maintaining DPS on the boss as much as you can. But mechanically, there is nothing else going on in this phase, and since the boss does not need to be tanked during siege mode, you're really free to do whatever you please during this phase. It's also possible that your raid will use the strategy that you see in the video here, which is to completely stay away from the boss, out of his mortar barrage range. And if that's the case, once again, you won't be able to do anything, and you can't actually attack the boss either. So the best thing you can do as a tank here is to help handle the crawler mines when they pop out. So again, adjust according to your raid strategy, but those are the basic options. Either way, you don't need to do anything special other than dodge the mortar barrage if you're in range of that attack. Now finally, we'll talk about crawler mines. And again, these work mechanically just like they do on normal. So if you're used to those on normal, you should have no problem on Heroic. They're basically the same. However, on Heroic, because these do a lot more damage, it's important that the tanks help to mitigate the mines. So the best thing we found was to have the off tank, whichever tank is not on the boss during that 30-second period, to be available to come out and grab one of the mines. 90% of the time, you will be free to do so. If you're not on the boss, you'll have that 30-second window, and the mines will come out, and you can grab one of them. So we found the best thing was to have the tank, off tank, get the mine that's closest to melee, wherever that happens to be. And otherwise, you can get one on the left or the right. Just make sure you have an assignment worked out so you know which one you're getting. Sometimes you can even get 2 of them if you have enough time. However, the rule is that you cannot allow the other tank to get 4 stacks of flame vents or of ignite armor. So in the event that you have only a few seconds remaining on your ignite armor debuff and you need to taunt the boss again, you should not get a mine, and instead you need to inform the raid, that I can't do it this time. You need someone else to get the mine, because that is far more important that you maintain the tank swaps appropriately rather than to soak up one of the mines that someone else could easily pick up with a cooldown. Otherwise, if you do get a mine, you shouldn't need a cooldown of any kind as a tank. You won't take very much damage. So just step on it, get knocked in the air, come back down, and proceed as normal. So that's really it. Basically just manage the tank swaps, the positioning or facing of the boss, figure out what you're doing for siege mode, and then help with the management of the mines when you're not tanking the boss. And you should get this guy down pretty soon. That is the Heroic Tank Guide for Iron Juggernaut. As always, good luck, and thanks for watching.